I'm only going to take about a minute, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mark, and then he's going to talk for probably less than a half hour and open it up for discussion. By the way, if you're concerned about my face, it's because I just finished some treatment for too much sunburn when I was a kid, and I'm finished with that. It'll all look differently again in a few weeks, so you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about Mark because Mark's done all the worrying for himself, as he will talk about. Mark wrote an extraordinary book for his children, which he will talk about tonight. And I would really suggest that all of you pick it up because it's full of very real, very human wisdom for both your professional but also for your personal lives. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And there are at least two big areas of work, professional and personal, that Mark can talk about that moved me. One was as a colonel in the United States Army and working in Iraq. Mark was assigned to work with the chief of staff of the Iraqi armed services, and spent a year working intimately and closely with him. And the way he approached working with somebody from another country is really an extraordinary tale. And for our school, where there's so many people from so many different countries, that capacity to work across boundaries in a way that is deeply respectful and appreciative and curious is unusual and extraordinary. So I hope Mark will talk about his work with that gentleman there, Babakir. And then Mark has been facing his own physical challenge, which he's going to talk about. So without further ado, Mark, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, I'm being treated here at Dana-Farber, so it's very fortuitous for me to have this opportunity, and I appreciate you all giving me the time to come here to speak to this group of people, to all of you. So thank you. The first thing I need to do is introduce a friend of mine, and that's why I have this slide up here, Buford. So Buford is the name that I gave to the cancer and to all of the surgical complications that came from that, because it failed, and it's quite a mess. I know that I know that I look healthy, and I know that I sound healthy. I know enough about myself to say these things. But underneath my clothing, it's a train wreck. At any given time, none of us knows when we're going to die, but I can hear my clock ticking, all right, very loudly in my ear. I don't know if you can tell by the lights, but my skin is incredibly yellow. My liver is starting to show the signs of end-stage liver failure. I mean, this is kind of what it looks like. I feel like I have the hangover from my 21st birthday every day. All right, just to give you all a sense of, that doesn't incapacitate you, but it makes you feel like crap every day. And so my choice is to stay busy, because I know you can all relate with this. When you're focused on other things, when you're focused on a task, you just seem to kind of lose focus on the things that are bothering you. And if you haven't experienced that, then try it out. And I'll be talking a little bit about that with my remarks. So an introduction to Buford is in order, and I found that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So, got to turn it on first, dummy. All right, that's Buford from the inside. That is my liver, the orange. You'll notice there's no left lobe because I don't have a left lobe. It was taken out in the surgery. And the red circles are the tumors. So I'm operating on roughly 15% of my liver. This is looking at my feet towards my head. So you can see, you've seen it this way, now you'll see it this way in this picture. So you can see I've got more material behind, but that's pretty nasty, and it leads many of the people who are working on me, both here in Boston and back in Minnesota, to say people in your condition with your surgical complications are not alive right now. And in fact, they don't have the energy that you show. So they stop just short of calling me a mutant, which it doesn't bother me, it's just the way it is. So I can't explain why or how. I can offer some speculation, but I'll talk a little bit about that with just 4 things I want you to chew on. And then this is me from the outside, looking at the same, these are the surgical complications essentially. You can see the scar goes all the way across, and that hole right there is to my stomach. So it leaks the contents of my stomach 24/7. It was a hole that developed after the surgery 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. And I didn't think you could live with a hole in your body like that, especially near the stomach or the intestine. But there it is, and here I am. So that tube sticking out of my side runs through my rib cage and connects what's left of my tumored liver to my body. Because the duct that connects your liver to your body, it's not just a tube, it's not a straw. It actually closes and opens and closes and opens and closes and opens. Mine stays in the stuck closed position. So they had to put a tube in there to keep it open permanently. The great news is that the bile starts to flow from my liver as it should. The bad news is that anything that backs up inside of my intestine goes into my liver. Not really good to have digestive juices inside the liver. You can imagine what that causes. And it runs right through the middle of the cancer stuff. So it is an incredible mess. And that's Buford. And that's the reason I introduce him is because Buford, I think, is really the name that we give to all of our adversities, any of our adversities. And, you know, mine happens to be 6'9", 900 pounds. But relatively speaking, you know, when my son breaks up with his girlfriend, his Buford feels like 6'9", 900 pounds. And only through the experience of life do we realize, you know what, that wasn't the end of the world. And so, by way of introduction with Buford, I like to say that Buford doesn't suddenly make me an expert on everything in life. And I say that up front because I know that there are at least some of you that say, well, this guy's dying, why does he have a special license? You know, it's a fair question. I've asked myself that question, and no, it doesn't. What it does do, and what our Bufords should do when they're really big, what I think they should do, is give us a stark clarity of focus about what we're doing and why we're doing it, at the very least. So that's Buford. And by extension of the whole Buford doesn't suddenly make me an expert on everything, I want to offer, as I share my thoughts tonight, that I am just one perspective on life. And I say that because I am going to speak with great conviction and passion on the 4 topics that I'm going to talk about, and maybe even in some of the answers that I give to you. But I need you to know that there is great humility behind my telling you whatever I have to say, because I recognize that and respect that there are people who don't see it the same way. Whether it's working with foreign dignitaries, you know, overseas, or working with people from different religions, I do respect, I have a healthy respect for people who don't see it the same way. But it's not going to come across in the conviction of the answer that I give, okay? So, the 4 things that I like to focus on when I speak to groups, and I've only been doing this for about 2.5 months, are words, 4 concepts, I guess, that I think all of you have heard, or at least I certainly hope you have heard them. Perspective, perseverance, personal courage, and an occasional middle finger. Now the 4th one I know you probably haven't heard. That's my own little touch, you know. You got to have your own signature. But the others, and even the middle finger, to some degree, we're all familiar with, or we think we're all familiar with it. So what I want to start, before I get into those 4 things, is I want to make this a little interactive. All right? And so very quickly, I want all of you to take your hand and put it in the air like this. Make a circle. Now put it to your chin. Why do you have it on your cheek? And it never, I know that seems like he got me, or was it gotcha? No, it's an exercise in humility. We all understand the power of actions over words. And one of the chapters that I talk about with my boys is when dealing with adversity or leadership challenges, do not substitute words for actions. There are people, highly educated, highly experienced people that I know in my life who wear 4 stars, some of them, and they don't fully realize that they're doing this. Okay? And if they can do it, then I would suggest that all of us can do it. And in fact, 95% of you just proved it to yourself. And this is the point at which I want to point out that the focus of my remarks are about you. I try to make everything that I talk about you. Because if you come here tonight and you think that this is a great story and Mark is just doing amazing things with his life and that's awesome, then you're completely abdicating the message that I'm trying to give to you about what you can do about any manner of Buford that you face in your life. Okay, so maybe a futile exercise, but I'd like you to think about a Buford in your life. It doesn't have to be cancer. It can be something that's just weighting you down. Maybe it's a personal relationship with your spouse. Maybe it's a personal relationship with a friend or a family member. In fact, most of the Bufords that I can think of that are particularly heavy for people deal with interpersonal communication. A boss, a subordinate, a peer, someone in the family. So think of that Buford and how impossible that person is being. I mean, I know I share some of the responsibility, but it's mostly their fault. Right? So, actions versus words is the first exercise in humility. The next one, and by the way, these are ones that I do for myself every day, all right? So I'm up here preaching, but it's a challenge for me every day. Read the words. What's the difference? So I've talked about the power of actions over words, even when we don't realize we're doing it, and most of the time, I would dare say, unless we're very conscientious about it, we don't realize we're doing it. And this is another example. When people talk about truth, be it religion or politics or money, pick any third rail subject that you'd like to talk about, okay? When people talk about truth, I like to refer to this. Which one is the truth? They're both the truth. They're the same words, but they're both the truth. Words mean things, and words are mean things. They're the same words, and a little tick mark on the page has made a difference. And this is just in English. Good grief. Pick any foreign language out there where they add the accent aigus and the, right? And the different tick marks and, you name it. And it becomes something even more complex. And in particular, I like to point to religious backgrounds when it comes to this kind of stuff, where the emphasis has been placed, or the emphasis. So words mean things. And what do they mean? And when you walk away with such clarity and certainty on a subject, be it adversity or a leadership challenge or what have you, that to get to the 4 things that I'm going to talk about, all of which I want to repeat, I think has anyone not heard of those 4 things? Perspective, perseverance, personal courage. Anyone not familiar with those? Or think you've got like a firm understanding of what those mean? This is where you go as a level of humility to prove to yourself that you need to take a closer look at those 4 things. And I'm just offering 4 things. It's more than that, obviously. And then I'm done with this. So, to start with, and I'm going to try and relate this more to leadership because this is more of a leadership forum. So I'll try to cater to that as I go through my remarks. But I will tell you that overall, when I wrote the book and when I think about overcoming adversity or about dealing with adversity, because you don't always overcome it, sometimes it's a matter of managing it, that it's really about leadership. Adapting to change to get something done, right? And in the case of leadership, managing change in order to get somebody else to get something done. But it can also be leadership in your own lives, at home in particular. Okay, so first of all, with perspective. Somebody has it worse than you, learn from them. is kind of my bumper sticker. And I don't like putting bumper stickers, but everyone needs a bumper sticker, so there's your bumper sticker. And I like to relate, and I told Ron that I was going to do this, relate to some of his work, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with going to the balcony, right? So we all understand the power of perspective and the need to step outside of our circle in order to gain that perspective, or going to the balcony and looking at it from a different angle. So we know this. I mean, we all, I think, intuitively know it. And then even when we get a concept like going to the balcony, okay, now I've got something to really think about. And yet we are surrounded by people with a loss of perspective, and we can all acknowledge that they're not idiots, these people who lose perspective. And they're not idiots. So how did they do that? How did they lose perspective? And I like using this example. 2.5 years ago, when I was sitting in the hospital, laying in the hospital like a cut open deer carcass, I looked up at the TV and I was whacked out on drugs. Dilaudid. Anyone know what Dilaudid is? It's like morphine times 10. And it was like, ooh, you know. And this image came up on the TV, and it was an elderly woman and her husband, and they were describing a tragedy, a crisis. I mean, they were using great emotion to describe their situation. And I was intrigued, you know, what happened? And the story went on, you know, it was the worst experience of their life. And I'm like, these are elderly people. They've lived life. They've seen a lot. And this must have been horrific, whatever they experienced. What happened? They were on a cruise ship that lost power off the coast of California. And incidentally, it just happened again recently in the news. I don't know what it is with cruise ships. But I can draw the same corollary. And what was it that made this? I mean, did the ship run aground? Did another ship hit it? You know, what the hell happened that this was the worst experience of their life? Warm beer. No ice. Finger foods. And I was taken in that moment. I'm sure that the loss of the money that they had used on that trip had colored their remarks, certainly. You know, I don't want to be righteous about the words that they chose. But it demonstrates, I think, collectively, and I don't know how, I don't want to say this is unique to our generation, but that was a complete loss of perspective. Where do you go to describe, what words do you use to describe a tragedy in crisis when you've used those words to describe warm beer and finger foods? Right? But these people aren't stupid. And yet clearly they've lost perspective, completely lost it. So how do you gain perspective? And one example is the going to the balcony, you know, and I use that all the time. I've used it throughout my career, and never more so than being in the hospital. So how do we gain perspective? Well, I like to ask questions rather than make statements about the answer to that. Where do you go for your news? Is it all from TV? Is it all from newspaper? If it's from TV, is it all from one station? I know for a fact that I'm going to challenge every single one of you, if you're honest with yourself, about the answers to those questions. And where do you get your information from? When you go to the balcony, you know, or when you're on the dance floor, do you pay attention to the music that's being played? You know, do you pay attention to who's on your dance floor? Because those things have an impact on how you view the concept of dancing and social interaction, you know, to continue on with that analogy. And you've all heard the saying, at least my grandpa said it all the time, show me your friends and I'll show you who you are, right? So how often do you leave your little circle or your box to experience life from a different angle, you personally? And then the second question, how often do you seek people who are outside your box to ask and seek perspective on where you are? So that's number one. And I'm saving the personal stories for your questions on what that might look like, all right? So the next one, perseverance. We all understand perseverance is never giving up. But the thing that I want to challenge you with on, just like with perspective, is perseverance is more than just not giving up. Perseverance is sometimes knowing when not giving up does not mean running your head into the wall over and over again expecting to take the building down by this, or completing whatever objective by hitting the same target over and over again, or being solely focused on that as the method for getting done what you need to get done. Sometimes it involves stopping, reviewing the people on your team, maybe coming up with a different solution, reviewing the conditions around the objective, but doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. And yet, we do it. We do it. Now, I'm all for 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 tries at the same thing, because maybe you just did something wrong in the first go-around. But at what point do you stop and say, never giving up doesn't mean that I actually have to achieve that specific objective that I was after? So the quick example that I like to use is I wanted to be a teacher at West Point. When I graduated from college, that was my goal. I wanted to do that. Long story short, and I did, without belaboring the point, every year I was reviewing my plan for how I was going to teach at West Point. I did not get to West Point. And I realized that my azimuth, my never giving up focal point, was way too narrow. What was it that I was after? What was my objective? And I had to reflect on that and figure out that it was really about having the ability to perform a social interaction with my fellow man, younger men and women, and to have a discussion, me learning from them learning from me, just the whole idea of being a teacher. That's what I wanted to do. And there are many ways to get to that. Now, you'd rightfully call this lipstick on a pig in certain circumstances, but finding another way means maybe you need to cast a slightly wider net. And so I started seeking assignments that got me to that sense of satisfaction, to that sense of purpose behind the perseverance, if that makes sense. And I was told, incidentally, all the way along the line, you're making a huge mistake. You are committing professional suicide the way that you're going about managing your career. And we can get into this in the Q&A, but they were wrong, very wrong. In fact, I've enjoyed incredible success by doing it this way. So perseverance is more than just never giving up. And then the third one, personal courage. Now, again, here's one of those interactive things. How many of you think, and you have to just tell me off the top of your head, just respond when I ask you the question. How many of you think that personal courage is about not being afraid? Come on, don't be afraid. If it's the first thing that entered into your mind, not being afraid. Being fearless. Okay, couple of hands, couple of head nods. How many of you believe that it is all about being petrified? Okay, here's the reason I love asking this question and framing it into the discussion, is because only a fraction of you answered the first question. Maybe 4 or 5 hands went up. Only a fraction of you answered the second question. Maybe 10 hands went up. And most of you are a third answer, which is, I'm not going to answer. I'm not sure. And each one of those indicates something to us about personal courage. Don't you know what personal courage is? I mean, don't you have a concept of what it is? We all do. We all have a concept of what personal courage is. We have some idea of what it means. And yet the simple question of the use of fear within personal courage, which is, in my opinion, fear most resonates the need for personal courage than any other word, we're not quite sure where its role is. Fair enough? I believe that personal courage is being scared to death. Because it's human, first of all. Unless any of you are not human, which I would love to meet with you in private off to the side, you're going to feel fear. You are going to feel fear. So telling someone not to be afraid is foolish in my mind. I've had people who, one person in particular who was interviewing me for a book called Fearless Leaders. And I'm happy to be a part of the project, and I'm not going to be righteous about it. about my concept of fearless, but it's a misnomer. It's misleading to say fearless leader. Because I do not want to be next to any leader who is not just a little bit of afraid about what they're going to do. When I went to airborne school and I was getting ready to jump out of a plane, the fearful guy was checking his shit 2 and 3 times. All right? The fearless guy was like, I'm good. I'm good. And in the hospital, the fearless guy, I'm absolutely certain what I'm going to do here. I've done this 100 times. I don't even need to think about it. Holy shit, I misdiagnosed him. We got the wrong, I didn't need to take this guy's liver. Yeah, it did really good at taking the liver out, but didn't need to take the liver. Fearful guys are saying, hey Bob, John from oncology, Bob from IR, infectious diseases, I need some help wrapping my head around this. Because I know that I'm good at what I do, but I need a different set of eyes here. So you see the perspective coming in on the angles here? The need for perspective? But a fearful person is considering other people's eyes. Not just anyone's eyes, a specific set of people's eyes. And then the last one, the occasional middle finger. I always have to specify what this means so that you don't leave here tonight going, woo! Everyone can kiss my ass. No. The middle finger is a universal sign of contempt, disrespect. It dates back thousands of years, actually. The definition that I like to hone in on is one that is derived from the war between the English and French when they were longbowmen. The English longbowmen would turn the tide of a battle in a heartbeat. Deadly effective. And they would use their middle finger to draw that bow. So when Frenchmen would capture English longbowmen, they would cut that finger off. And English longbowmen would then, with their finger, would give the French the sign as an indication about what they were going to do to the Frenchmen when they got to them. So the difference between this out on the road and this with the English longbowmen is that this out on the road is about you. It's about that guy, his fault. You know, this is a bunch of crap. You suck. And this with the English longbowmen is what I'm going to do about the hardship that I'm about to face. So the occasional middle finger that I'm talking about is about you. What are you going to do when life doesn't go the way that you want it to? What are you going to do? Not what are you going to think, not what are you going to say, what are you going to do? Well, I don't know what I would do. Well, think about it a little bit. Ponder. And at the very least, come to the conclusion, I still don't know what I would do, but at least I've wrestled with some stuff. Right? And maybe you can apply it to your own Buford at the time. Experiential learning. Right? The example that I like to use with the middle finger is the book. I started writing it in July, last summer. And I sought, as I have most of my career, I believe I am better as a member of a team. That is the whole perspective thing in a slightly different casing. But I contacted several people to see if they would be interested in helping me write. And I'll just share the experience of one person, David Murray, whose name is on the book, who said, I'm not interested, I'm not a ghostwriter. And frankly, I don't think you can do this. You're dying. I'm not trying to be mean, but you're dying. And from the sound of it, it is terminal, so I don't think you can make it. And I said, well, first of all, I didn't ask for a ghostwriter in the note that I sent you. I'm writing the effing book. All right? I've kept 20 years of journals, and I just need an objective set of eyes. I need someone who's outside my box saying, I know what you're trying to say, but I don't understand it, or you're saying too much about it, or you're not saying enough about it. That's what I want. That's what I need. And I need someone who's brutally honest, not somebody who's going to say, well, he's got cancer. I got to be kind of soft. And no, I need it. I need the facts. And a long story short was he agreed, and he said, okay, so what's your goal? When do you want to get it done by? And I said, by Christmas. And, there was this long silence over the other end of the phone. Mark, there's no way. I mean, I said before that I didn't think that you could get it done, and that was with a long timeline. You're talking about something that is hardly possible for healthy writers. You're not a writer. You're dying of cancer, and you've got a lot of stuff on your plate right now. I don't think it can be done. And I could feel my hand trembling as it came up. Right? And I said, well, I'm willing to try. I acknowledge what you're saying. I'm not a fool. But I acknowledge this from the get-go. Understandably, and it should be this way, I have more faith in me than you do. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean just, you don't know me yet. You're going to come to know me, and you'll know that it's not some crusade that I'm on. It's just something, practically speaking, that I think I can get done. And I finished it in 6 weeks. That is the middle finger. How did you do it? I don't know. Read the book. Read the book. There's the answer. Because I can't summarize perspective, personal courage, perseverance. That's really the answer. And the occasional middle finger. That little piece of attitude that says, nobody is going to tell me that I can't do this. Now, fly? Yeah, they can tell me that I can't fly. I accept that. You know, if the phrase, you can do anything you put your mind to, were true, we'd see a lot of flying people, wouldn't we? All right, so I accept the reality of our humanity. But it's like, there are some things within, if you acknowledge your own strength, that play a very direct role. And I had to concede, as I finished the book, that perhaps I had written a piece of shit. All right? I think you have to be honest with yourself. Maybe I rushed through this too fast. And then Robin Williams wrote the foreword. And then 4 U.S. Chiefs of Defense endorsed it. And Secretary Rumsfeld wrote a note for it. And Ron Heifetz actually was one of the first to read it and just sent an incredible note that brought me to tears. I mean, I've been following his work since 1994 when I got my commission. So there's a personal connection here. And this is not paid advertising. But I have, you know, his 2009 book could be a blueprint for how I've literally led in my life as an Army officer and in my own personal life. So yeah, the occasional middle finger, there it is. And then they said, well, now you've got this self-published problem. You know, how about designing the cover? Well, I sent the cover is my design. I mean, I had a professional put the concept together, but I took the picture, I put the contents on there, the meaning behind it is mine. And they're like, have you done this before? Did you work in this field before? This is what it's all about. And then, well, you know, marketing is hard work. It's, you know, the average self-published book sells 300 books in its lifetime. 7,500 copies in a month and a half. So I'm willing to try. So I'm not ignoring what these people are saying, and I don't want this to be solely about this example of me writing the book, but it is a concise example of what I'm talking about when I say perspective, perseverance, personal courage, and the occasional middle finger that kind of wraps it all together, nice and tight, into a punch, into life, about what are you going to do when life doesn't go the way that you want it to go. At least try. Now maybe I was lucky. But maybe not. Maybe it was preparation meeting opportunity. All right? So those are the 4 things to chew on, and we can go to questions, if you'd like. Or moderate a little bit, I'd like.
Well, I'm sure you will have questions, so I'm going to start off with the hardest. What's it like to be dying?
It sucks. Not for me, but I think about, I always dread going here, but it's the most real part of the experience is I have a wife who is, I hate to sound cliche, but she's like been my soulmate. And I've been her soulmate. And so the idea that she says she's going to be a cat lady when I die. I don't know if she's saying that to reassure me, but she really does like cats. So, but the daunting reality is that 20 years or 30 years, when you've experienced a soulmate as powerfully as we have through 19 years in the active duty Army, which has really called on us during deployments to combat and to otherwise, and then to move 7 times, and things that were not impossible, not hell, but they brought us to the brink many times. And then through that adversity, it either kills you or it makes you stronger. Nietzsche was onto something with that. And for us, it made us stronger. And so the idea of living then for another 20 or 30 years without that person by your side, we can all imagine what that might be like. My kids, I'm not so worried about them. They're going to start life, and they'll figure it out, just like I figured it out. Some with my parents' help, but a lot from the tribes that I encountered through my life, and I know that they'll find those tribes, and I've left breadcrumbs for them. You know, I left a big bowl of breadcrumbs with the book, which I tell them in the book, just like I told you at the beginning. Mine is not advice. It's not. I don't want you to take it as advice. I'll put it that way. It is perspective. It's just one path. It's just one approach. God knows there are many approaches because other people have done the same thing. I'm not alone in what I've done. I just have a bullhorn in front of my mouth. So, yeah, what it's like to die. And then the reality for me is keeping one foot in reality, one foot in today, live each day. Not like it's your last. People say that. I think they like to say that. But just experiencing today. Like I said that I'm going to go to Iraq. The Iraqi general that I work for, he still calls me his son. He refers to me as his son. My name is Shirzad Zabari for him, which frankly I took as a joke when I got it while I was deployed there. But now 6, 7 years later, I'm still Shirzad. And he bought the ticket for me to come over. And people cannot comprehend why, at this point, and why I'm in Boston actually, where I may actually have weeks to live because of what's going on with my liver right now, why I would still have Iraq on the plate. Like, have you canceled your trip to Iraq on March 8th? And my answer is no. I'm not going to barricade that bridge till I get there. The ticket's paid for. Why would you make a decision about something that you don't know is coming? That really could go either way. And I know that it seems like I'm digressing, but it gets directly to the question, what is it like to die? Focus on living, and that's hard. I am talking to you about things that I have to do every single day. So it's not rote memory for me. It's a challenge every single day.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Juan Telles, and I'm a Master's in Public Policy student, first year. And you said you have some
Where are you
theories.
from?
I'm from Mexico. And you said you have some theories about why your condition, even though anybody else in your condition is already in a very much worse situation than you. You said you have some theories of why that is in your specific case. Can you elaborate more on that, please?
Yeah. I'm not often a big fan of labels or theories per se. I recognize that there are applications, but I don't believe in a straight black and white kind of thing. So an example is the concept of positive psychology. Are you all familiar with that? That just bodies in motion tend to stay in motion, and being positive about things generates, positive action. And yet I find it hard to argue with the fact that staying in motion and staying active, that there must be something to that. And the only reason that I still question is because, like, on days when I am in horrible pain or I have constipation like you wouldn't believe, it is not being positive that gets me to where I need to go. You can ask my wife, I'm a big baby when I get sick. How many of you have heard of sepsis? Okay, a good number of you. So sepsis kills 40 to 60% of the people who get it. I've had 30 bouts of that in 2 years. That's a big reason the doctors say I shouldn't be alive. And I am not happy when that thing strikes. I can't be. I can't be positive about any of it. I just physically and emotionally cannot be positive about it. But I have attitude. You know, I'll do it. But you're not feeling good. I know, but I can do it, so I'm going to do it. There's going to come a day when I can't, and I'm not fucking happy about it right now, but I'll get my own water. And it's almost like an adolescent. I recognize in myself an adolescent response. You know, here son, let me show you how to ride the bike. No, I'll do it. Crash. You know, come on, let me help you. No, ride, crash. But I think, I want to believe that in that exercise, I'm learning something about myself, and maybe my body is learning something about itself. Without getting too deep on this stuff, maybe that plays a role.
My question is kind of, sorry, my name is Alice, I'm a recurring student here.
Yeah.
My question is kind of a spin-off from the first question. So for me, when I think about dying, the hardest part is to prepare those who are around me. So how do you exercise leadership in your family, being a parent? How do you prepare your wife and your children to accept this inevitable fate?
In 2 words, respectfully and with patience. So clearly, if I see things the way that I do, and my family does not, so like what you hear me talking about and this energy and my desire to go around doing the things that I do, you know, my wife, for example, does not understand why I am as motivated and as energized as I am. I could never do that. I can't do that. I don't have the capacity to do that. How are you not angry? Why aren't you more angry? And at the beginning, I would say that I was far less patient. Well, like, why are you angry? I'll turn the question on you. Why are you so angry? Well, because it's not fair. It's not fair that you got cancer. Okay, well, it's not fair that anyone gets cancer. Even the person who deserves it. Like, you wouldn't wish it necessarily on them. I'll say necessarily. We'll leave a little room for Hitler, all right? So how do you patiently and respectfully help people understand what you already have come to know, but they cannot see? So respectfully and patiently. And so I try to find analogies, because I think analogies, you know, are about finding something that you know already as a truth, and then that's what it is. That's how I do it. The analogy. So, for example, I know some of my family members hate hearing this example, but when my wife asked me, why don't you get more angry, it was Thanksgiving. And I said, an example? Because 3 days ago, I read about a guy who was driving down Highway 3. You don't have to go to Africa to find this perspective. Right in my neighborhood, a guy was driving down a county road not 2 miles from our house. A deer came out on the road and came through the driver's side and killed him instantly. Father of children, happily married, gone. He didn't get any of this, Kristen. He didn't get any of the, look at what we're able to enjoy. We can have dinner. We get another dinner, even if it's just one more. That guy doesn't get anything. Yeah, but I don't want you to have cancer. But see, the reality that we live in is the options that we've been given in life at a very base level. And so I believe that most of the misery in life comes from mulling over options that you haven't been given. You know how many times I've been asked the question, if you had a magic wand, you know, would you go back? I don't have a magic wand. But if you did, no, I don't have a fucking magic wand. Do you have one? If you do, I'll borrow it. But I don't have one. So stop playing what if with the past. You've got cancer. Deal with it. You've got a divorce. Deal with it. Yeah, all the reasons that you got up to this point, they're important. They're important to reflect on for why and how, but only to a certain point. What are you going to do about it? but it was her fault, and that my boss hates me, and that John, he's a suck-up. It's the reason he got the job. And your conscience should scream in your ear, yeah, I hear you, man, but you didn't answer the question. What are you going to do about it? So that's the conversation like I pose to people who say, I don't understand how you live this way. Because I know they're being polite. Like people would meet me at the door. I went back to work in the Minnesota National Guard full-time after my diagnosis and with the cancer still growing inside of me. And I would walk in and people would say, very nicely, how do you get up in the morning? And a couple times I would laugh and respond, how the fuck did you get up this morning? What got you out of bed? And I said, I know you mean well, but the same thing that got you out of bed is what got me out of bed. I hate to sound so blunt, but you've stopped just short of asking me why I don't kill myself now that I know it's coming. Right? That's that thinking outside the box. I love thinking outside the box. But recognizing that the box is a box because it usually works. Give you something to chew on there. Yeah. She had her hand up first. I got to go to her. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Tia I'm from Singapore. Do you have any more regrets in life? And if you do, how do you come to terms with them?
It's a great question, and I think it's one that we often ponder. I know this may sound strange and quite unbelievable, but I don't have any regrets. I've been asked this question a number of times, and I remember the first time I was asked it, and I thought it wasn't fair when I gave the answer that, well, I don't have any regrets. It kind of seemed like do you ever ask why me? And I don't know if you've heard this from people in your families or from stories of other cancer patients. You know what was great about Bob? He never asked why me. And you know what I'm thinking in my head? Bullshit, he didn't. He did. At least once or twice, he asked why me, or he's not human. What he did with the why me, that's what might be unique. But you ask why me. And so with regrets, I'm sure there are some little ones, some insignificant ones, but on the big things, if you live a purposeful life, if you can get over yourself, like one of the chapters that I have in here is one of the most important to my boys, or that I think is the most important to them, is to be serious, but not to take yourself too seriously. To cry, but also to laugh. And so, like with that one bit of wisdom lodged in the back of your brain, clubbing you as you make your mistakes in life, that if you hold firm to that, when you have the disagreement with your wife, for example, or your child, or your girlfriend, or whoever, and you're like, this is it, I'm not taking this shit anymore. And you pull that, be serious, but don't take yourself too seriously, you cannot help but to be able to take a day and say, I'm being an idiot. This doesn't dismiss his or her role in the dysfunction that's taken place, but this shouldn't end over this. We need to work a little harder. And I need to have more of an argument with myself about what that looks like. And that's the way I've been since I was a young man. And it takes discipline. You have to do it even when you're like, I hate doing this. I hate it. It is his fault. It is all his fault. And then that conscience should scream in your ear, but what are you going to do about it? And there are some points, I will tell you, in my life where I've said, you know what I'm going to do about it? I'm not going to have a relationship with you anymore. I have tried, I have done the different perspectives. So this isn't about signing a suicide pact with getting along with people either, all right? It just means giving it the go, using that perseverance, using that personal courage, and then at a certain point, which is different for all of us, saying, all right, that's enough. And I have to accept that you can call this quitting if you want, but that's the way it's going to be. So no real regrets. And that's the beauty of it. I'd like to think that's the sales point of doing this stuff, that the morals that I talk about in here are 2,000 years old. They're not new. The stories are pretty new. And they'll have you laughing and crying. I can pretty much guarantee you that. But these are not new concepts. And if you follow them with discipline, this is one of the rewards. That you don't go, oh, if I had only. What else? Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll come back to you right next. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Hussein. I'm a local guy from the Boston area. I'm a mid-career student. I'm wondering, when you talk about personal courage, what has given you the most inspiration? Not just say in your whole life, whether not just most recently, but what inspired you?
This inspires me. Like, we've all heard the saying, life sucks, right? It's a cliche, life sucks. And I like to put an asterisk next to it, but there's goodness astride and right on top of the suck. And the example that I like to use to answer your question as directly as I can is with my own kids. And I hope it's instructive to us as adults. I hope. But when my twins, they're getting better at it as they get older, but when they're young, we just get smarter at dealing with this when we're older. But when right now they're 12. And when they're particularly unhappy with something that I've done to discipline them, they're pretty angry. You know, it usually involves me raising my voice, harsh consequences. Essentially, dad's an asshole is what it's going to be. And I accept that as my responsibility. And acknowledging that I may have done something a little imperfect in my handling of it, but I'm going to err on the side of being too hard than being too soft. And I can see that they're experiencing anger and frustration towards me and how unfair they truly believe this punishment is. And they're feeling that emotion. Forget the action. They have this real emotion, and the hormones are flowing through their bodies. And I know from studying biology, just basic level stuff, that you can't just turn that off. It's very real. That's why telling somebody not to be afraid is like telling someone not to breathe. The fear is there. It's what you're going to do with it. That's something that you can control. Even if it's irrational, you can say, I know it's irrational, but do this. So with them, I let them experience that surge of emotion that's now in their body for about 3 or 4 hours, give or take, and I can kind of sense, and I go up to them, usually subtly, while they're working or doing whatever. Maybe they finished the chore that they've been given as a consequence, and I will intentionally find something funny, really funny, that I know they know is funny, and I will make reference to it. And I can see them. Sometimes I'll look directly at them, sometimes it's just casually. I can see them, the crook in the corner of their mouth, as angry as they still want to be at me. And then they immediately suppress it. And sometimes even cover it up, right? Anyone got kids? All right, have you experienced this? No, hide their face, turn away. You're not going to see me experience a good emotion. But the beauty of it is that getting to this personal courage, this emotion. I think courage is all about managing the emotion, what you do about the emotion. That I had given them something legitimate. It was a legitimate, you can't fake that. The hormone was released. That good feeling hormone was released. And I saw it. And the challenge that I give to them and the challenge that I give to adults is, let yourself experience that. And you'd think that's an easy thing to do. But no, I want to be mad. I want to be mad. And so for an adult like my wife, I can't go out to dinner with my friends. How can I go out to dinner with my friends or have fun with my friends when you're in the condition that you're in? She knows that it's going to be a good experience, that it's going to bring something good, and yet won't. So let yourself experience the goodness. And so what I find as I go about talking with groups of people more and more is that I'm finding more courage, maybe that's not the right word, to do the things that I'm doing, knowing that I'm able to unlock that stuff that's right in front of us, really, and have a real positive impact in ways that I never could have imagined. That's what inspires me. Yes.
My name is Nathan. there.
No.
I wonder, in your opinion, what's the best thing about being that much close to death as you are? And if any, how do you take advantage of it?
Well, one way I'm taking advantage of it is I'm doing something with it very deliberately. I mean, I decided to write this book. Now, if it's for my sons, then I would have just given it to them and that'd be the end of it. But I've written it for the public. And so, you don't know if anyone's going to listen to this stuff. Everyone's dying. And I'm not talking about that we're all dying, we're all going to... No, I'm talking there's a good number of people who are at death's doorstep. Okay, so what's unique about mine? Well, I've had some crazy shit happen to me in my life. So I'm bringing focus to that and using it as examples of things that, again, I think are right in front of us, and just tell it in a storied way. I think we learn better when we've got stories, right, that we can turn to. So that's really it. Yes, sir.
Sir, on that note, what do you hope to accomplish before your time does come? What's left on the bucket list, I guess, today?
Yeah, I've already met everything that I want. So, but it would be. It's not that I don't have goals, but like I'm just living it from day to day. My general goal is just to do as much as I can do, and I know that that's not specific enough. The Army leader in me tells me that's not specific enough. I need to have objectives. And people will call me out. They'll say, "Well, have you got this? Or have you done that? You know, have you done?" Yeah, I've actually done all those things. Oh, wow. I mean, how do you keep up? You know, I don't have time to think about the things that I know naturally at this point in my life. You know, I'm just kind of muddling through.
Why don't we take one or two more questions and then...
I'd like to get to your question about the, or if you would like to hear about the relationship with General Babaker.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah. And try to make it as it pertains to you, and maybe we can make this a little conversational. So if something pops up that doesn't quite resonate, please raise your hand and I'll call on you and we'll make it just quickly conversational. So I was embedded with the Iraqi forces, directly with. I was surrounded by people who did not speak English. Okay, let's put it that way. And I will tell you that in the 7 years that we've had an American embedded in that office, I'm the first one and the only one to learn Kurdish fluently. When I was the first one, though, assigned to that position. So I'm giving you a little bit of hindsight and telling you this about the 7 or so people that have worked with him. But General Petraeus is the one who picked me. I was working in the Pentagon at the time. And when I got there, I was a little anxious. You know, I'm not a foreign area officer. I don't speak a foreign language. I don't have any diplomatic skills per se. You know, so why did you pick me? Well, I know I have seen your attitude kind of thing, and you've seen a little bit of it, so that had a role to play. And he said, I don't know how this is going to work. We're just going to try it. And so he put me in there, and he said, I'm just going to put you right in there, and this is what we're trying to achieve, good communication between our two offices. Ultimately, that's the goal, good communication. Relate. And so that's what I did. And one of the first things that I realized, he speaks Arabic and Kurdish. Okay, he's the Iraqi chief of defense. So he runs Iraq's armed forces, and he speaks Arabic everywhere that he goes, but Kurdish is his native tongue. All right, that's what he grew up with. And so I made a conscious decision within about a week that, first of all, I would trade my weapon and all my ammunition and all my protective gear to be able to speak his language. Because that's how frustrating it was to be able to connect with him on a human level, let alone a working level. And so I decided that I was going to learn Kurdish. And why Kurdish instead of Arabic? First of all, it's off the tongue versus the back of the throat, so it was more of a Latin-based language. So it was a conscious decision there. And then I thought, I wonder if it would mean anything personally, since it's such a personal thing for him. And I will just, without belaboring the point, I will tell you that I think defined our relationship. And as obvious as that is, again, I'm using a little hindsight to forward the story here because I don't have an hour to talk about it. No one else has replicated that. As powerful as that was, as defining as that was for the relationship that we have 6 years later, just learning his language, just that basic thing, communicated something powerful to him and to me. And then, so to take it further, we have this wonderful relationship, right? And yet for that entire year, oh, this is being recorded. It wasn't a, there were times when it was a disrespectful relationship where I would tell him very bluntly what I thought. And I'm a nobody, relatively speaking. He's a 4-star general. I was at the time a junior major, and I would offer thoughts and opinions, after several months of being with him. Things that did not jive with what he thought. But I always invited, like, tell me, why is it different? Why is it, just challenge his thinking on stuff. So like, just anecdotally, one of them was corruption. The issue of corruption. You heard it on the news all the time, how corrupt they are. He says, you know what the difference, this is through his language, you know what the difference between our corruption and your corruption is? And I said, what? And he said, you've legalized yours. And he said, we know where real corruption starts. We do have corruption, but it's not your corruption. You know where your corruption starts because you have a law that tells you where it starts. We know where corruption starts because we know what's beyond reasonable in the cut that you take for your little piece of the work. Now, we know in this country everyone gets a cut. I can hold up this book and show a perfect example of everyone getting a slice. And it's all legal, even though it seems damned criminal. Right? So, conversations like that. Religion. We got into subjects of religion. He's a Muslim. I'm a Christian. And throughout my year with him, I had this passing phrase, really, and many of you probably do it. When you hit yourself or you see something incredible, you say, oh my God, right? It seemed like I said that like 4 or 5 times a day. In about, I don't know when, I think it was about my 6th or 7th month there, we were driving in his, we always drove in the back of a vehicle, a Toyota Highlander. And I turned and I said, oh my God, it was like a mule carrying like 6 cans of fuel or something like that. And we always laughed at mules. It was like a slug bug. Remember that game? Slug bug? Whenever you saw a mule, we'd say, Hasu! Me and the Iraqi chief of defense playing slug bug. So I said, oh my God. And he grabbed me by the arm and like, he's never done that before. And he said, Mark, in English, why you always say your God? Not your God, our God. That like should give you chills, because it gave me chills. This man who is 100% convicted about his practice of his faith, his religion, could see just a brief glimmer and an application in a very humorous and human way, this connection. And so as we went through this very imperfect, very human relationship over the course of a year, where I would tell him he was being a baby or acting unusually stubborn on something. You're like traveling with my grandpa. For God's sake, I'm supposed to handle your passports. And then we'd get in line for something and he'd be missing, like we'd be traveling internationally. I don't know if you guys know anything about the Kurds and the Turks. They don't get along really well. All right? It's like the Turks are screwing us at every turn. No matter what you think they're doing, it's going to be bad. And he didn't have his boarding pass. And I said, let me hold the boarding passes because you're busy. You're focused on other things, as you should be. No, I'll do it myself. Damn it, sir. Being stubborn. And then he would make fun of me for getting angry at him. It really was like being with my grandpa. And we get up to the gate for him to hand his boarding pass. We're getting on the plane. Can't find his damn boarding pass. Now, I cannot tell you how I got him on that plane. Because you can't get on a plane in America or anywhere really without a boarding pass. It's even worse overseas. And I got him on board. I swear to God, I don't remember. It was like just a blur at that point. But we got on board. And then as we sat on the plane, I will admit to you that he had his own seat, and what he didn't know was that I was arranging for him to have his own set of 3 seats, all right, where he could sit in the middle and then have no one on his left and his right, but he thought this was just prearranged. Like, he didn't need, I don't need your help, you know? You need my help more than you realize, and I'm not fucking helping you this time. And soon people would sit down next to him, and he was surprised. One person would sit next, and every time someone came down the aisle, Adnan, his interpreter, and his nephew, he would come, he's sitting next to me, and we're like, the next guy that came down looked like a sweaty, nasty, hadn't bathed in 2 weeks. Oh, please be the guy. Please be the guy that sits next to him. And he did. He got the big, nasty guy sitting next to him, and it was like, so he's already a small guy, and he was just sitting like this, sandwiched between these 2 people. Yeah, simmering that for 5 hours. So little stuff like that was very human. It was not, pie in the sky, yes, sir, whatever you say, sir, I am a major and you are a 4-star general. It was very human, and it was teaching me at every moment. There wasn't any conscious plan on my part. I just thought my job is going to be take care of you like a member of the family, and that's how I'm going to try and do it. And there's a whole bunch of examples. There's one really funny one that I share in the book about a way that I communicated back to him what he meant to me.
All right. Well, we're a little over time, but
Okay.
I'm sure people want to chat with you a bit. You can stick around for a few more minutes. Thank you so much for spending your precious time with us.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.